Please welcome National Geographic photojournalist Brian Skerry.
Good morning. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Although I'm a National Geographic photographer, I wanted to begin today with a photograph that I didn't take, this view of Earth from outer space, because I think when we see these images, we're reminded that we very much live on a water planet. It's often been said that about 3/4 of the Earth's surface is ocean, and that's true, but I think maybe an even more important statistic is that 98% of the biosphere, where life can exist on our planet, is water. And every other breath that we take as human beings comes from the sea. So it's in our best interest to understand this watery world and to protect it. My work as an ocean photojournalist is about exploring the world's oceans, getting close to animals and understanding ecosystems down there, and then sharing what I've learned with the rest of the world through the pages of National Geographic. I sometimes think of my work as just one long string of extraordinary animal encounters, one after another. And I've learned over the nearly 4 decades that I've been doing this, that if I just spend time in the ocean or on the ocean, I will see extraordinary things. But over those years, I've also begun more frequently to see some horrible things as well, things that may not be evident to most people. So as a journalist, I felt a sense of responsibility to begin turning my cameras towards these things, to tell a more complete story, and also to look for solutions to the problems that are occurring in the world's oceans. You know, Earth's oceans are today under assault. They're dying a death from 1,000 cuts. We see newspaper headlines on a regular basis about a lot of doom and gloom. But despite the frequency of this serious bad news, I do believe there are solutions that we need to look at. And today I just wanted to focus really on one problem and one solution. You know, in the last 100 years, we've become increasingly good at catching fish. And one of the serious problems we face today in the ocean is the problem of overfishing, particularly commercial, industrialized overfishing. You know, this is a photo that I made of a fishing trawler, a factory trawler in Alaska. And it actually looks more like a spacecraft with all that technology. The reality is, with this technology available to fishermen today, the fish simply don't have a chance. So we need to look at other ways of dealing with this, because this problem of overfishing has resulted in the decimation of so many iconic species. Animals like the bluefin tuna, a magnificent animal that roams the Atlantic Ocean, but today their stocks are 90% in decline. Or the codfish, an animal that literally built the economy of New England, but today, colonial New England, but today their stocks are at 1% of colonial levels. We've lost 99% of this animal, and every single year right now on planet Earth, more than 100 million sharks are being killed annually around the planet. And when you consider the role that predators play to the health of any ecosystem, we realize that we can't kill 100 million sharks and expect everything to be okay. So the other problem with fishing is that, commercial overfishing, is that it doesn't only decimate or do damage to the intended species, but it does damage to other species and to the ecosystem as well. This is one of the most common methods of commercial fishing in the world. It's something called a bottom trawler. And this assembly is towed over the bottom to catch whatever the intended species might be. In this case, it was shrimp. But as you can envision, it's also very good at killing everything else in its path, and because it's a bottom trawl, it's effectively clear-cutting the ocean floor. This is a photograph I made of that fisherman's hands after he towed that net for 1 hour. He had 7 or 8 shrimp in his hand, and all those other animals are dead on the deck of his boat that have no commercial value. These are called bycatch and will be thrown back into the sea as trash. As we see right here, I swam under that shrimp boat as they were shoveling the bycatch back. And in many places, this is the true cost of a shrimp dinner, a handful of shrimp and 12 pounds of other animals that die in the process. So I think we need to look at other methods to feed the world. You know, every single fishery in the world is at maximum capacity today, and many of them are in severe decline. They're continually depleting the resource. So I believe one solution might be aquaculture, fish farming. Now, I didn't always believe that. I did a story for National Geographic magazine a few years ago about this and actually went into the story thinking very negative thoughts. I didn't think it was a solution. But I learned along the way that there are some very innovative techniques that are being used today and that this can, in fact, be a solution. So I just wanted to talk about two of those today, one of which is a method called open ocean aquaculture. And this is a way where fish are grown, or different species are grown, offshore in these large underwater pens or cages. This is something called an Aqua Pod. It's actually produced in the state of Maine, and this was in Mexico, but it was being towed out. It's like a giant soccer ball that's then lowered underwater, and you raise the animals in that pen. In this particular case, they were raising shrimp. And here we see the owner's son with his new age flock sort of dancing off his fingers here, all these shrimp around him here. But this type of a method is very good in terms of the environment because the current distributes any waste, which would otherwise be a problem, and it doesn't harm other species or do damage to the surrounding ecosystem. Another method that I focused on in my story that I wanted to share with you today is something called integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, which is essentially growing different animals or different species that all work in harmony with the environment. This is a company I photographed on the northwest coast of Vancouver in Canada, Vancouver Island, and it was started by an entrepreneurial scientist. And the idea here is that he's raising multiple species, each of which is a profitable harvest. And he begins with a type of finfish known as sablefish or black cod, a very rich fish. But normally, coastal fish farms would be a problem because the waste creates nitrates and it can choke a coastal ecosystem and create dead zones. But here, just downstream, just down current, they're also raising scallops, which are natural filter feeders. They purify the water. That's what they normally do. So he's got about 1 million of these scallops in these underwater cages here, strategically placed just down current, that filter and clean the water, and then just down current of that, he's raising sugar kelp on these underwater clotheslines, and the kelp takes whatever nitrates still remains in the water column and turns it into oxygen. So each one of these things is a profitable, harvestable product, and it's delivering a controlled product to the market. He can test it, he can make sure that it's right. So to close, I think that aquaculture may not be perfect, but I think we're heading in the right direction. And it's essentially about mankind moving away from being a hunter-gatherer of the sea to being a farmer, as we did on land eons ago. And with these right techniques, we can deliver a controlled, tested product that will feed billions and allow the oceans to heal and restore themselves. So thank you very much.